Okay, we're almost ready, everyone. So give me just one more second here. Okay, I need to mute Facebook. There we go. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Concussion Discussions book launch party. I am Amy Zelmer from Faces of TBI, and we are here today with several of the authors in the book. And we're going to go around and introduce everyone in just a moment. But first, I want to bring Shane in here. So if everyone can just mute themselves, the panelists here, except Shane. And then it's been a minute since I've done a, okay, where'd Shane go? There we go. Now you should just see me and Shane on your screen. All right, so I am here now with Dr. Shane Steadman. He was the co-collaborator with me for creating Concussion Discussions. So I just want to say thank you to helping me get this book into creation. This is volume 2 for any of you who may not be familiar. Volume 1 came out last March, so March of 21. And now this is volume 2. So we have a whole new volume, totally different stories written by some of the same doctors and a bunch of new doctors as well. So Dr. Steadman, I'd love for you to take a moment and just tell everyone who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And, thanks a lot, Amy, for, putting this together. I think I want to start off first. I think was good for everybody to know that our whole goal on this was to promote doctors that are in the field and doctors that are helping brain injury or patients who are suffering from brain injuries. And I think there's so many unsung heroes out there that was the whole goal of the book, was to bring some of these to the light and say, look, there's some amazing people in this world that are really supporting those who are suffering from brain injuries, and here's what they do. So I'm excited. It's great that we have another book coming out. It's always great to see some new authors and to learn some new faces that are out there. And I think a lot of people who, end up reading this book say, hey, there's somebody in another state. There's somebody doing, this type of therapy that I've only heard about. And I think it just sheds a lot of light on what we're doing. So yeah, so I'm super excited about that piece. My name is Dr. Shane Steadman, I'm in Denver, Colorado, and our specialty is really kind of combining, functional neurology and functional medicine together. So we see a lot of brain injury cases every day, all day, every week of the year. So it's something that's really passionate and near and dear to our hearts. And, and it's great to see these people get better. And a lot of times people don't know where to go for help. And so it's really heartbreaking to watch them suffer. So I think anything that we can do as a group, as a community, as a group of doctors, to help these people who are suffering, that's the main goal of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And, I had this idea quite a few years ago to come up with an anthology type book. So those who might not know my story, I had a traumatic brain injury in 2014. I slipped on a patch of black ice. I had my little Yorkie in my arm. So they think I kind of held on to her as I fell backwards and I landed head first. So throughout my journey, I started writing and I published 2 books of my own on my journey. And then I published an anthology of survivor stories. And I always kind of had this thought in my mind of bringing together doctors who specifically work, and other professionals, they might not always all be doctors, and other professionals who specifically work with brain injury patients and know how to help them. Because it took me 2.5 years to find a functional neurologist. And it just shouldn't be so dang hard to get better after brain injury. And unfortunately, our traditional healthcare system doesn't know what to do with us. And we just get bounced around from doctor to doctor to doctor. And so you have to look outside the traditional healthcare system and find doctors like functional neurologists and acupuncturists, and there are PTs and OTs out there who truly know how to help us. So that's kind of was my vision a few years ago. And then when I partnered up with Shane, we were like, let's go for it. And so, like I said, last March, we came out with volume 1, and now we have volume 2 coming out. So I'm super excited. And it corresponds, tomorrow is National Concussion Awareness Day, if you were not familiar. It was started, I believe, in 2018 by Brooke Mills, who was in high school at the time when she had her traumatic brain injury. And she now competes in the Miss America contest. She's currently Miss something in New Hampshire. But her platform throughout all of her competitions has been traumatic brain injury. And so that is why she started National Concussion Awareness Day. And she has earned over $50,000 in scholarships from the Miss America program, and is attending, oh, Shane, can you help me out? Which chiropractic school is in South Carolina?
South Carolina?
Is it Palmer? No, Palmer's in Iowa.
No.
Dang it.
I don't know what's in South Carolina.
It's at the tip of my tongue and I can't think of it. Yeah, so she is in chiropractic school following in her mother's footsteps. So super awesome, super inspiring. So tomorrow, Friday, September 16th, if you're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and you want to share your story, use hashtag National Concussion Awareness Day, which I know is really long, but you can also put hashtag NCAD also. So use both those hashtags and just share your story on social media of your concussion brain injury journey. All right, now Shane, I'm going to pop you off here for a moment. And I'm going to share with you our little teaser for the Concussion Discussions, which begins on Monday. So next week, Monday through Thursday, is our Concussion Discussions online summit. So all of the authors you're going to see here tonight have recorded a video presentation that you will receive next week. Each day, Monday through Thursday, you'll receive an email with 2 or 3 video links so you can watch them. Then you have 24 hours access to watch the video. And I'm going to play now the, I'm gonna play the preview, hopefully here. Give me a second. There we go. Okay, Shane or Cassie, can you give me a thumbs up if you see it? Okay, and let's hit play. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Concussion Discussions, brought to you by Integrated Brain Centers.
There's a lot of things in that autonomic nervous system should make us go, oh, geez, no, is anybody even looking at this?
They go, well, I didn't have it that bad. I wasn't that sick. With COVID, it's a virus, but it likes to attack same cells that the brain is made of.
What acupuncture does, it can create blood flow for your glands, your organs, your muscle, and your brain.
People are getting a lot of treatment focused on their neck, only to discover that they actually did have a concussion that kind of essentially went undiagnosed and untreated.
It's like he's living in fight or flight all the time. And I was like, well, you're probably
Bingo.
right.
All right, so that is our little summit preview for you guys. I am going to drop in the chat, I'm going to drop the link. So you guys, anyone can go ahead and get registered. All you have to do is sign up with your email. There you go. You should be able to click that link and go ahead and get registered. It starts Monday. So I am super excited. I put a ton of time into this and it's always so stressful leading up to it. And then the week gets here and I'm just like, and then I get all sorts of emails from people telling me how much they learned from all these doctors. So it's very rewarding. Okay, I'm going to take a moment to bring everybody into focus here. And I know Dr. Clayton Shue is still on his way. He's running a little bit late, but he will be here shortly. So this is some of our amazing crew. And I see Dr. Ellis got his background changed. That's pretty gnarly. All right. So we have here tonight, Dr. Mark Ellis from Georgia Chiropractic Neurology. We have Dr. Cassandra Jimenez, also from Georgia Chiropractic Neurology. Dr. Cassie Koss, one of my dear friends and favorite colleague here in the cities. Dr. Mehul Parekh from Northwest Functional Neurology. Dr. Shane Stedman, of course, from Integrated Brain Centers. Dr. Ayla Wolf from Healing Response Chiropractic and Functional Neurology. And Dr. Eric Kaplan from Kaplan Brain and Body. So we're going to take a moment and I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves and what they're talking about in their chapter. And they can tell you who they are, where they're from, so that if you're in the area, you have a resource. And then just a brief overview of what their chapter is about. So let me start it with, where'd everybody go? There we go. I'm going to bring, since you were here first, I'm going to bring Dr. Mark Ellis in first. So Mark, go ahead and I'll let you take a few minutes here to introduce yourself and your chapter.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Amy. It's great to be here. I am Dr. Mark Ellis. My clinic is in Atlanta, Georgia, and we've been practicing functional neurology for the past 20 years. I've been able to be very influential in training functional neurologists all around the world, which has really been wonderful. And my chapter was on a patient with a post-COVID syndrome, which I know is a little bit different than a concussion, but to me, and like Dr. Stedman is a master in biochemistry, it's kind of like a chemical concussion. So COVID reacts and it'll affect different stem cell lines, and some of those are the same as the brain. And so my patient was from Alabama and was sent over, and she was in a wheelchair and she was having difficulty gaining her ability to walk. And so we talk about it a little bit in the chapter. She had what's called an apraxia, and we did different functional neurology applications, and we restored her ability to walk. I just was talking to her the other day, and she's in Manhattan, and she's going around because she, of course, had all the light and sound sensitivity as well. And so she's like, I'm in Manhattan having a blast, going all over the city. And so she's super excited to have overcome the obstacle of COVID or a concussion, same kind of a thing. So that was what my chapter was on.
All right, give me a second to get back there. There we go. All right, so I like in the little preview, your little clip in the preview, how you talk about that COVID goes after the same cells as our brain. And I thought that was a really powerful statement.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we have stem cells and then they divide into different things. So your mucous membranes in your skin are from the same stem cell line as your brain. Some people view your skin almost as an extension of your brain in a philosophical kind of an idea. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the book. It's very exciting.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, next up, I'm just going to go across who I can see on my screen. So that's going to be Dr. Cassie Koss. Welcome, Cassie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes. So I'll let you go ahead, tell us where you're from, who you are, and a little overview of your chapter.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Cassie Koss. I practice out of the cities right now, Minneapolis, Minnesota. I love what I do because I get to use a combination of functional neurology, but over time I've also been able to add in different functional medicine aspects, more lifestyle and precision medicine types of modalities to especially address not only just recent or more fresh per se brain injuries, but also people suffering with cognitive decline, dementia, and Alzheimer's disease. And that actually just became an area of treatment and everything where I became very passionate about. And there are people I love to work with. Just a lot of headway that you can actually make around a disease that doesn't have a lot of hope associated with it. So I'm super passionate about that. And that's what my chapter is about, just the relationship between brain injury and kind of the associated risk or possibility of developing dementia later on or Alzheimer's disease, and kind of what you can do about it. Because we know now there are things that you can actually do about it.
Yeah. And, I had some feedback that people were kind of skeptical about because you and Dr. Kaplan both were talking about dementia, and some people were kind of like uncomfortable with that. They're like, I don't want to hear that I'm going to have dementia. And I'm like, well, maybe you should watch, because, the whole point here is like, it doesn't have to end that way. And that there's things that we can do to help slow it down or prevent it altogether. So thrilled to have you here. All right. So next up, I have Dr. Mehul Parekh from Northwest Functional Neurology. Welcome. So great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good afternoon, good evening back on the East Coast. It's great to look up top there and see so many of my collaborators and colleagues and great friends again. And on a personal note, my mentor in this field, Dr. Ellis, is always great to see you. So I work at Northwest Functional Neurology out in Portland. Our team under Dr. Glenn Zielinski, I've worked with him for about 3 years now. And we do specialize in all stripe of neurological disorders and injuries. For this anthology, I wrote about a patient who we saw, I believe last year, who for 6 years had been suffering from a disparate variety of symptoms that we were able to put together as the combination of POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome, EDS, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome. Now, if you've worked with these beforehand in this field, you understand that there's some crossover, there's some carryover between these three conditions. There's some correlation, there's some commonality. But the story for her and for her mother was a story of for years looking at these individual pieces and not getting any answers as to why these things were all running in concert with each other in the aftermath of a concussion that she suffered while sledding downhill in her backyard. And to piggyback on what Dr. Stedman said earlier, and what you were saying, Amy, brain injury by itself is hard enough to recover from. And when you're sort of spread out and everything's looked at in this piecemeal fashion, and there's not a look at how these things intertwine, it makes it even harder and even more frustrating. So a lot of the focus of what I was able to write about was not just the technical aspects of how we were able to make some improvements for her, but just the process of digging deeper, a little bit more of an investigative process. As I said many times in the piece, it's not a matter of us having all the answers, but we just knew how to ask the right questions and put the puzzle together. And I think everybody who deals with a brain injury is their own unique puzzle. And that's the thing to take away from your entire series. And I'm glad to be able to be a part of contributing to that puzzle.
And, and I think understanding POTS and the whole dysautonomic component after brain injury, because I think most of us struggle with some form of it and just don't even know what's going on. Right. So I think it's a super important chapter. And I just want to highlight that your colleagues at Northwest Functional Neurology, Dr. Glenn Zielinski and Shauna Hahn, are in the first volume.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
super thrilled to have you here. And I'm really curious, are you in Shauna's office right now?
No, I'm actually at home right now.
Oh, okay. I see the plants. And so
With the
I thought it
plants,
might be
absolutely.
Shauna's
The community that
office.
exists in an office is always Shauna's office. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Next, I have Dr. Ayla Wolf. Let me get you in here. There we go. Dr. Ayla Wolf from Healing Response Acupuncture and Functional Neurology. Welcome. And Ayla, you were in this last issue as well, and I'm so thrilled to have you again here this year. You are just a beautiful writer and so smart, and I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me okay, because I don't think I have a great connection. So everything's okay? Super. So my clinic is Healing Response Acupuncture and Functional Neurology. So I'm actually an acupuncturist, not a chiropractor. And it's located in Stillwater, Minnesota, which is right on the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin. So I see people from both states. And my specialty, I would say the majority of patients that I see are people with concussions. And what I was finding was a pattern of a lot of people that came to me, either they were getting a lot of attention focused on their concussion and nobody was really paying attention to their neck and what was going on there, or vice versa. People were getting a lot of attention placed on their neck and their concussion was going undiagnosed or kind of ignored. It's so important to address both of these things and to not just pay attention to one or the other. And so my chapter gets into how acupuncture can actually improve the joint position sense of the neck, and also through doing points in the jaw actually help with sensory integration of balance and the important role that the jaw plays in neck motion and mobility and joint position sense, and how that integrates into our brain's ability to know where we are in space and to be able to have good balance. So I get into a lot of the overlapping symptoms that people are experiencing. If somebody has a traumatic neck injury, that alone can cause things like dizziness, disequilibrium, nausea, headaches, chronic neck pain, obviously, but even changes in depth perception. And so I think it's really important that as practitioners, we do know how to functionally assess the neck and functionally treat the neck, and to be able to see the connection between how neck trauma can also create the same symptoms that concussions can, and to be able to tease out some of these pieces. So I give a little case study in my chapter as well. And I think that, being somebody who specializes in concussions, the majority of people, they don't think of acupuncture as their first, second, third, fourth, fifth, or even sixth kind of treatment option. It's most of the people who find me have already seen, so many other practitioners and are still looking for answers and looking for help. So I think part of my contribution to these books is also to bring a spotlight to acupuncture and the benefits that it can offer to people as one of the tools that can be helpful for people in their recovery.
There we go. I didn't mean to kick you out. There we go. Yeah, so thank you so much for being here. And I've experienced acupuncture with you, and it is a game changer. And I didn't realize all the ways acupuncture can be used. So I think it is, like you said, you're like the 10th person on the list. And so I think it's really great to bring this awareness to your modality. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for doing all this.
Okay, next up, I have Dr. Cassandra Jimenez. There we go. From Georgia Chiropractic Neurology. Welcome. So thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, as you said, I'm honored to be with Dr. Ellis working at Georgia Chiropractic Neurology Center. It's in Marietta, Georgia. We have so much fun working together in there. And it's an honor to be both together in your book. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And in there we see a lot of like cases. We see concussions, POTS, we see a lot of dizziness and vertigo. In the book, we talk more about vestibular concussions, and I talk about one of the case studies that we have. That's one of my passions, and we decided we had a really good result with one of those patients, and we decided to share that in the book. As we know, there's like research, they said like there's multiple type of concussions. You can see the vestibular concussions, you can see, as Dr. Wolf said, like problems with the neck, you can see problems with the eyes or the limbic system. And even though all those symptoms are like different, they overlap to each other. So one patient that can have like a vestibular concussion can have like neck pain too, or can have like nausea and things like that. So we talk about a patient that we had that he had a concussion after he fell from a bicycle. That was his passion. So his main goal was to be able to ride again bicycle without any like neck pain, dizziness, or any headaches. And we talked about the vestibular system, and then we mentioned the difference between the peripheral vestibular lesion and a central vestibular lesion. When we have dizziness or vertigo, we always like think about BPPV, like the crystals are on the inner ear, but we know that there's much more about it. So we talk about what we did, what testing, every time we did the Dix-Hallpike, the test that we do to diagnose the BPPV was negative. But what we found was when we were put in different positions, he was having the positional nystagmus. So we knew then that the problem was not in the peripheral vestibular system, it was more central. And then we explain about different reflexes that we tested to, like the VOR, the COR, and how we managed to treat those. And then after 10 visits, the patient was able to ride his bicycle, not have headaches, not have neck pain. And as Dr. Ali said, last month, he came just for a follow-up, and he was still having like riding the bicycle. He was still not having dizziness or vertigo or headaches. And then, yeah, we decided to share that with you guys. And then I hope you enjoyed the chapter.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure getting to know you in this journey, and I'm really excited for people to read your chapter. So thank you for being here, Cassandra.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so let me go next. We got Dr. Eric Kaplan from Kaplan Brain and Body. Welcome. You are still muted. Technology. You're still muted.
All right. Sorry.
There we go. Excellent. All right. Welcome. Glad to have you here this evening.
Thank you so much. It's great to be part of this project, and with these wonderful doctors as well. I've been doing functional neurology since 2000. Actually, I think Dr. Ellis used to sign me in Atlanta when I started. So it's it's been a long journey. We've helped so many people. I have two offices, one in New York City in the West Village, and one in New Jersey in Bergen County. So we do a lot of help using neuroplasticity, where we're rewiring the brain. And I've been treating a lot of patients with Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's for so many years. And I found that a common answer to some of the questions was that there was a past history of concussion or TBI or, just sometimes not even severe, but a mild traumatic brain injury. So, and stuff can show up years later and they don't make that connection. So, just being in the neurology field for so long, it seems to be a common theme. And now, there is research that backs that up, that not as much mild, but definitely, moderate to severe. If patients don't do something about it, it can develop into dementia. And I think Dr. Cassie Cass, great name, I love it. So she was talking about that as well. And I have a personal experience with my own grandma having Alzheimer's disease. And, it was a sad last 10 years of her life. I was not young enough to know how to help her at that point. But I'm so glad that we're getting this book out there, because in my chapter, I review many of the things that you can do to prevent you from going down that road. So you might have hit your head now and had a concussion, but our job is to prevent you from getting dementia and Alzheimer's, and getting your brain strong, and using neuroplasticity and functional neurology training and all the neuroscience that we've read over the years in a very holistic and natural way.
Thank you. Well, like I said earlier, I think it's really important that people understand there's things we can do to prevent worst case scenario.
Exactly.
And so, thank you for just putting that out there and giving people hope that
that's
it's not
the thing,
a life
we want to give
sentence.
people hope, and we want to let them know that there's a lot of stuff that not only that the doctors do in the office, but stuff that they could do at home as well. So that's what my chapter is about. It's not only the stuff, that we do, like with the neurofeedback and the hyperbaric oxygen chamber and the cold laser and all the functional neurology training, but then all the stuff that you could do at home as far as exercise and nutrition and breathing and stress reduction and getting good sleep. So it's stuff that's valuable that they can implement right away.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kaplan.
You got it.
All right. Next up, we have Dr. Clayton Shu. And there we go. Welcome. So happy to have you here. We are thrilled to have you here. So I know you came in late, so just let us know who you are, where you're located, where people can find you, and a brief overview of your chapter.
Okay, thanks for having me part of this panel and to be part of this great project that you're continuing to do, Amy. I think we're all blessed to be a part of it. So I'm actually based out of New York as well. More of an Upper East Sider, up in the 80s and stuff. But I'll definitely have to meet you there. Sometime in the future, so we can compare notes, Dr. Kaplan. So we're located in the Upper East Side, and we actually have a satellite office now in the Hamptons, in East Hampton. And what we do is we provide acupuncture that helps to increase brain blood flow, as well as neck circulation. And what we've done is have an approach where we do take initial baselines of QEEG scans, blood work, different kinesiology tests. And then we devise like a plan to help the patient to recover. And we also use some modern technologies as well, including like a light bed and lots of different photobiomodulation equipment and stuff. And we find that it's been helpful, not only for concussion and dysautonomias, but also for the COVID long haulers to help them also recover. So I think a lot of everyone's skill sets here is very applicable towards the long hauler type patients who are still suffering post-COVID. So, but that's what we do. So we have a way of just kind of measuring to see if we can stimulate blood flow into different parts of the brain. And then we then perform different like little checkpoints and tests to see if there's improvement or not. And then we devise plans after that too. So that's kind of it. So I studied in Tianjin, China, and that was the focal area of stroke and neurology in Asia. It was a city called Tianjin, and basically there was about 10,000 stroke patients being treated every day at this hospital, where if you imagine every hospital in Manhattan was one hospital and every bed was basically treating some kind of neurological type of case. And so it became a very interesting immersion into looking at very unusual cases, even patients that were just in a coma for 2-3 years and their bodies actually did not even get atrophy or erode, but the acupuncture was helping the bodies basically like sustain their form and stuff. So I saw a lot of interesting cases like that, but definitely want to try Dr. Kaplan's oxygen chamber later in the future. So, but yeah, so that's what I do. I like to combine a lot of ancient kind of knowledge and herbology and acupuncture, and then mix it with a lot of modern high-tech equipment, and just find that kind of thread that needle between the modern and the old, and try to bring whatever we can get to help the patient feel better. So, yeah.
And I love what you just said about combining the old and the new, right? Because there is a lot of wisdom in older medicine, especially Chinese medicine. But thankfully, we've had advancements and have this wonderful modern technology. So it's a beautiful combination.
Yeah, it's definitely, I would say that there's a slice of knowledge from both sides that fits different part of that trivial pursuit, game piece that you always try to fill and stuff. So,
Yep.
So you don't know which color it's going to be, you have to almost try. And there's a lot of mystery to the cranial nerves and to the brain and stuff that we're still looking at. So we try to be as unbiased as we can, but we try to make sure that we work with the expert who's actually the expert in their field, So I definitely refer to like Dr. Wolf and different practitioners from the Carrick Institute, because I am not the master of spinning a chair and looking at the eye and stuff like that. And like, all those subtleties, it's like
Complementary modality.
Yeah. So I'll be like, we're gonna defer this one to our colleague here. So, so we work well and we stay in our lane, but we also, when we think something's effective, we like to, to make sure that it's heard. And I think that's what you're accomplishing here, which I think is pretty fantastic, because, a lot of us struggle with head injuries from high school and college. And, we're in New York City and we'll meet someone who played football, right, from Penn State or, one of the big colleges. And, they come in, they're walking very stiff and everything. And they didn't have any recent injury, but obviously there's been an ongoing interest rate growing, like head injury that's been like accumulating a lot of real estate there. So it's something that is great to have a lot of knowledge and stuff that they can actually sink their teeth on. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. So yeah.
All right. And before I turn it over to Dr. Stedman, I'm just going to take a moment to talk about my chapter, because I almost forgot that I actually have a chapter. So I have written a chapter in this book about how yoga helped me in my recovery. And early in my recovery, I knew I wasn't okay. And, I was initially diagnosed with a concussion. I had a dislocated sternum. I had C4-5 damage. I had torn muscles in my neck, my chest, my abdomen. I had a lot of injuries on top of my brain injury at the beginning, and I didn't know what to do. Nobody was sending me anywhere. I didn't even get sent to PT. Like, looking back, it's like, how did nobody even send me to PT for my injuries? The only one who cared about anything was the neurologist, and she wanted to give me Botox injections in my neck. And I was like, no, thank you. So I turned to yoga. I had already been doing yoga for many years, but I couldn't figure out how to do yoga because I couldn't get my arms up. I couldn't even get them up to cactus arms. Like, I could only get my arms up here. I was hunched and twisted because of my sternum injury. So I met with my yoga instructor and she helped me come up with 5 things I could do, 5 poses. And they included like eagle arms to help relieve my neck pain, seated twists for my low back, cat cow. That one was really helpful for getting movement back into my thoracic, into my rib cage. And then, you don't really have to move your neck in cat cow. You can, but you don't have to, because I had to keep my neck pretty neutral. I couldn't do anything where I tipped to the side or tipped back because that made me dizzy. So it was really challenging to find poses that I could do. But as I started doing them every single day, I found that I was getting range of motion. My dizziness was a little less. I could tolerate more movement. And eventually I started trying down dog and triangle pose, and sometimes I fell over, but that was okay. I got back up, and I really credit yoga for helping me get through those first years until I did find functional neurology. And it literally took me probably 5 years to get my arms to here. And then just in the last few years, I've been able to get my arms fully overhead. So it took a long time to rehab some of those injuries. But I'm very grateful for yoga. Yoga is an incredible modality for combining the hemispheres of the brain, making your right and left talk to each other. We do contralateral movements in my classes, which is the opposite arm and leg. We do a lot of crossing the midline. We do figure eights. I do eye gaze stabilization exercises in my yoga classes. I put all the stuff that I learned in my neuroscience of yoga training and just some stuff I've learned by doctoring with a functional neurologist. So my yoga classes are very slow. They're very gentle. You can stay in a chair the entire time. But I just want people to experience the power of yoga and how it really can help you heal, not just physically, but like mentally and internally as well. So it's a very complementary modality to anything else that you might be trying. So that is why I chose to write. I don't know why I didn't think to actually write a chapter in the first book, but we thought of it now, and I have a chapter in the second book. So I'm thrilled to share that with everyone. All right, so next up, we have Dr. Shane Stedman. Welcome. You're still muted. Oh,
No, I'm back on.
there we go.
Well, I have no idea why my camera's fuzzy, so it's driving me a little bit crazy. But I'm going to talk, and I'll keep it close.
You have a gloss filter on.
I guess, yeah. Some people glow, apparently not. First of all, I actually want to say, I was laughing because first of all, I love that Dr. Ellis is in this, and it's funny how people give some credibility to what he's done. I was kind of laughing because I was like, a lot of times when people come to my office, they say, "Oh, do you know so and so and so and so?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." Most of the people in Denver have either been, they worked for me or they've done their internship. And I was thinking, most of the people in this world have either in the country have either worked for Dr. Ellis or trained under him. So that just tells you how amazing he is. So it's great to see you on here, and what a dear friend. So, all right. So my chapter is, I was thinking about this, and I decided to do something on fight or flight because that is definitely one of the things that we see with almost every single patient, and probably every practitioner can say the same. And when we have these head injuries, all of a sudden we see these limbic responses, we see these emotionalities, things that just come to the surface. And a lot of people ask me, like, am I crazy? Like, what's going on? And nobody can figure this out. And I have to live in the dark. I can't be in the light. I can't go outside. I can't be around my kids. And so I try to write a chapter on what is that piece, because I think if people and patients can understand what's going on, then it's a little bit less scary. And if we can kind of figure out how to improve those parts of the brain, then we can get those fight or flight mechanisms to calm down. And so I think what I was really trying to explain is why do you have these symptoms? And I think even today, I saw patients, and I've probably talked about this several times, where one patient was wearing prisms because her eyes were coming together too hard. You know, another patient was wearing sunglasses and earplugs when he came into the office, and he can hear every single little sound that's in my office. And then I had another patient that had a concussion, and he was having PTSD symptoms, and he was very sensitive to light and sound and had a lot of emotion. So, I mean, that was just 3 times today that I talked about it. And so I know that everybody else struggles with this. And so that I wanted to kind of explain a little bit of what that is. And I mean, geez, we could talk about that for hours, but I want to see, okay, can we make it concise so that people understand what's going on and that they're not crazy and that it can get better? You just got to find the right people to help your brain kind of be better at, you know, in concert and kind of be in harmony. And when that happens, then those things are able to be better controlled.
All right. Yeah. And I think fight or flight, I mean, I would venture to guess 100% of people after a brain injury they're stuck in fight or flight. And like, I didn't know that's what was going on with me, right? I just knew that like things made me jump, light and sound, like too much sound. Like I had no idea what was going on. And when you clear that up, it's just like, so very important topic. Okay, I'm going to bring everybody back in because I think we all went. I don't think I missed anybody. All right, so we have everybody back here now. And I just want to tell everyone watching, whether you're on Facebook or you're here in the webinar, go ahead and drop a comment in the chat if you have any questions for anyone, or if you just have more of a general question, go ahead and drop a question. We'll try and get those answered. I just want to like comment on how like you all know each other, right? And like you all like refer and work well together, and like you all, if you're stumped on a case, like, gosh, I've never seen this before, I don't know what to do with this, like you might call up one of the other doctors, like you might call up Dr. Ellis or Dr. Kaplan. So I love that cohesiveness. Like this is a really small community. Unfortunately, there aren't a ton of functional neurologists. Like I wish that we could clone all of you and have you in every major city throughout the country and the world, right? Like it gets even less populated when you get to Europe and Australia and Canada. So I love how this community is just so cohesive, and, you know, sure, you're each other's competition, but yet you're not, right? Because we're stronger in numbers. The more people know about functional neurology, the better, the collectively for everybody. So thank you all so much for just being here. And I'm excited for the summit coming out next week. I'm excited for the book. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for being part of this. And I don't know if anyone wants to just kind of comment on that, about how, you know, like you said, everybody refers to each other and you all know each other.
There's a question about auditory processing issues.
That wasn't my question.
So Amy, you know, I think that's awesome, because we always talk about, we really need more people in the world trained in it. And again, you know, over the last couple of decades, I've seen more and more and more people pop up and their skills grow and grow. My skills constantly grow. And so I get calls, and I know that we all do every day, for help, but also for referrals. And now that there's more of us in the world being able to help people with brain injuries, it's actually a treat to be able to have good people in different locations to refer to confidently and know that the person whose life is compromised has a qualified person in their area to help them. And so it's been nice to see the community grow. And it's just really, really important. And putting us together like this, again, I think we can't give you too many accolades. So it's wonderful to get to meet some new people as well.
You know, I just have to say, when I started my Facebook group 7 years ago now, nobody knew what functional neurology was. Like nobody. And now it's like somebody posts like, I'm having dizziness problems, and like 12 people chime in to see a functional neurologist. So it like makes me so proud that like I've just grown this awareness and like trained my group to know, right? And that's thanks to all of you guys as well for just being active in my group and active on these summits and the book and just everything that we do to try to get the word out.
Yeah, and I it's amazing to see. You think, how much of an impact will we really have? And then it's amazing to see that grow. And I've been watching you for a bunch of years now, and I was like, man, I really need to get involved with her. So I'm excited to be in this book, and you're doing an awesome job. So it's wonderful.
Thank you. And I'm glad you're here. And you brought Cassandra with you. So thank you.
Yeah, she's incredible.
All right. So we do have a question from Galvin. And he just is asking about auditory processing issues. Not sure what that's maybe quite directly directed at. Maybe that's towards fight or flight, Shane. Or anybody?
Got it. I said definitely it could be related to fight or flight, and I'll let other people chime in because I think this is what's great about having a panel. But auditory processing, it can be anywhere from brainstem activation and how it's maybe if it's been damaged, are you able to process that very well? Looking at the temporal lobe, which is where some of the auditory processing goes into. So whenever there's auditory processing, issues within a brain injury, a lot of times we have to look at, kind of where hearing starts and where it lands in the brain. So we have to look everywhere from the ear to the temporal lobe, and we literally try to see where the dysfunction is. It's much like being an electrician, so if there's something going on, then you have to figure out where along that wire, where along that electrical system, is there a break? And so that's kind of what auditory processing is in a really simple nutshell, and I'll let other people take over.
Does anyone else want to chime in on that about auditory processing?
Well, sure. I think, like we were saying, there's a lot of different issues that it could mean. One of the things that I like to do a lot is I like to look at maps. So for instance, in the book, my patient has an apraxia, and she had body maps that were inaccurate, so she couldn't move correctly, but she also had auditory maps that were inaccurate. So what happens is, if I have sound coming from my right, it hits my right ear first, and then it goes to my left ear. And you have a delay mechanism of those sound waves that your brain has to process. But if a person's sound map is off, they become confused with different sounds. And it's very disturbing for people who are out to eat or something, because there's so many background noises, they can't focus on the person in front of them. And you can do a quick little auditory test where you get a friend of yours. Granted, we don't want to give any medical advice, so check with your doctor. But if your doctor says it's okay, you can have your friends snap their fingers, and then you see if you accurately touch where the sound is. And if you don't accurately touch where that sound's coming from, then you have an auditory processing issue at some level. It might not be a higher level like understanding a word, but your sound maps are not working. And I love checking that, and it makes a huge change for people, even for musculoskeletal problems.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with that. I checked sound map just a couple times today already on patients, and I think that's a beautiful thing to bring up, because that's really not talked about much out there, is the maps, and we all have multiple maps that tell us where we're at, what's going on, and if those maps get thrown off or skewed, then all of a sudden your body can go into a fight or flight, like we were talking about. But more or less, like, it's hard to function in a world if your maps are not doing well, or they're not working well together.
All right.
Yeah, I have a lot of patients who, we all have it. It's where they think they've been told they're crazy, but it's like, if your body map is telling you one thing, but you're talking to someone in front of you, but your sound map says they're over here, that gives you anxiety. That's a sensory mismatch. And then And then you have the sympathetic wind up and all the chemical components that'll go with that as well. And so lining those maps up is a huge change for anxiety and sympathetic drive.
Oh, can't agree more.
We have another question. Excuse me. Have any of you seen improvement in Alzheimer's if it's quite advanced? So perhaps Cassie or Dr. Kaplan would like to speak to that. And I want to add on to that because I was already going to ask this question of CTE. We hear a lot about CTE, in football players. And I know a lot of people who've hit their head worry that they will develop CTE as well. So I don't know if, one of you wants to chime in on one or the other.
I'll go. So yeah, there's so much hope for even advanced Alzheimer's. I just had a patient this week. When she came in, the only question she could answer was her name and her husband's name. She didn't know what year it was. She didn't know what country she was in. She didn't know and couldn't name a fruit. So she really had no idea of her age or no concept of really anything. And what we do in our office are these intensive therapies. It's like a brain boot camp where they're there for a few hours and they're doing all different types of therapy. And we're working on their oxygen levels, and we're working on their balance, and we're working on their eyes. And there's a lot of passive stuff that you could do for patients with Alzheimer's. They don't have to you can't just ask them memorization questions. So it's not like you could work on their memory until you fix their brain. So with these intensive therapies, we actually could get results in one day. I mean, literally the next day, she knew her kids' names. She knew what state she was in. She knew what year it was, literally just in one day. So now that's going to last. So we have to do these things over and over and over again. Neuroplasticity, you really have to continue with it. You can't just do one day and that's it. Like imagine going to the gym one time and think that, you're going to get in shape. So, and the stuff that I do, especially with the Alzheimer's, is create a lot of home changes too. Like a lot of these patients are severely dehydrated. That's such a simple thing that they could do is drink more water, and it makes our therapy work so much better. There are days when patients come in that have Alzheimer's, and the days that their brain's horrible, I know they're dehydrated, and that the daughter will say, yep, they haven't, the last 2 days, they haven't drank any water. Very simple solutions can make big differences. So that's our job as the doctors, to find out what area are they deficient in, what area the brain's not working, and maybe stuff at home that they're not doing as well. But there's lots of hope.
I'm muted.
I think I can.
Cassie.
Oh, sorry. I'll
Sorry.
go after Cassie.
You'll go after Cassie. Perfect. Cassie, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of going off of what Dr. Kaplan said, there is a lot that you can do in office, but then it's a matter of, what can they do at home to continue it and to optimize. And then also on top of that, what is driving that neurodegenerative process? So if you can narrow things down to, is it dysregulated blood sugar? Is it issues with the body's detoxification system? Has there been exposure to like heavy metals or molds or things like that you need to work with? Just even like identifying those and working with those, and then further working with the things that you can do at home. And then also then too, just helping to like educate whoever their caregiver might be, I think is a big part of making improvement in Alzheimer's more successful. Because as we know, it's not just a disease that affects the person itself. It usually affects everyone around them and everyone in their network. So the more that we can do to kind of help their caregivers and the people around them understand the changes and what needs to be done and what can be done, I think the better off everyone will be.
Mm-hmm. And Clayton, you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree with Dr. Kaplan and Dr. Cass. I think there's an old Chinese saying, which is nobody trips over mountains. And you have to, it's these little anthills that get us when we don't get things lined up. And address like many small things that just lead to dehydration and poor electrolytes and that stuff. And also just the fact that that also relates to the gut-brain axis, right? Which creates the protein plaques that can build up in the brain. I think doing the exercises that Dr. Kaplan talked about and stimulating the frontal lobe increases memory, right? But also we're finding that in a lot of the research, there's a lot of gamma frequency devices that are actually shown now to actually stimulate shrinking the protein plaque lines in the brain. And that can actually be put into like a simple session where there's like 15, 20 minutes where the patient can rest, whether you're doing acupuncture or sound or light therapy. So there's some pretty interesting studies where even the spatial memory increases when a mouse is stimulated just with like a 40 hertz light, basically, or a 40 hertz sound. It doesn't matter if it's light or sound, but it is definitely showing that it can actually decrease the plaque lines. And even before the plaque lines are decreasing, it actually starts to stimulate different components of memory. So we tend to go that route often in my clinical practice, but it's also stuff that I've learned just basically keeping in touch with my functional neurology colleagues and everything. So, and I met Dr. Ellis too. I just want to say that. Hi, Dr. Ellis. So
Everybody knows Dr. Ellis.
So yeah.
I think I'm the only one who hasn't met him in person. And again, if anyone has questions, oh, hang on, I'll come right back to you, Mehul. If anyone has questions, please drop them in the chat, or if you're on Facebook, drop it in a comment. And I did just put the link in the comment or in the chat section to the book on Kickstarter if you want to pre-order it. And if you don't have the first edition, there is a level where you can purchase both the first and the second edition. All right, Mehul, you were going to say something.
Yeah, what I think is really interesting to hear, as I get to hear everybody's different approaches and modalities to something like Alzheimer's or to Parkinson's or any kind of neurodegenerative process, everybody's going to approach it a little bit differently. But I think one of the things, without bragging about ourselves too much, what I think that is really a great feature of what I see in our functional neurology community is the level of depth of the physical examination with our patients. We like to take a really like a long, very detailed look, whether it's through diagnostics that look at eye movements and quantify the inputs from your inner ear to your brain and your brainstem, frontal lobe activity, motor lobe activity, balance, whatever it is. And what's really rewarding when you look at something like any degenerative process, or anybody who even suspects, hey, what's going on with my brain? Am I starting to slow down? There are classes of eye movements that correlate directly to your level of neurodegeneration. You can look at the speed of how your eyes move up and down, and that can tell us a lot about the activity from those areas involved in neurodegeneration. And that by itself can empower so many people to show, hey, you think everything's going wrong. You think that there are so many different disparate things that are going wrong, but when you break it down, it's actually one or two things that are really at the core of what you're experiencing. The majority of your brain works really, really well. And that's incredibly empowering to be able to tell a patient that, hey, I've used it myself, and I've seen Dr. Zelinsky use it a lot. You've got the frontal lobe of a pro athlete, somebody who's been dealing with headaches and vertigo for 6 months. You tell them something like that, and it's like you just feel like, hey, there is a chance that this is going to get better. So from the outset, I feel like regardless of how you want to approach it clinically, I think everybody's approach is so spot on. I'm already taking things little by little from what you guys are saying. But the ability from the jump, to say, hey, there are things we can do to make a difference here is so empowering and just a very special thing to be able to do.
Yeah. You guys are all very unique in what you do. And like I said, I scream on the rooftop and preach about funk neuro all the time. Ayla, I'd like to come to you for a moment, going back to neck trauma. What can you say to people? Because I think often car accidents and people get a form of whiplash, and they may be told they have whiplash, but nobody ever tells them they might have a concussion. So what can you say to someone watching who has been told they have whiplash, but maybe doesn't understand what's going on with them?
Well, I do think it all comes back down to that neurological exam, because when you're doing a neurological exam, at least my patients, and I'm sure everybody else here has this experience where if you're, say, having somebody do a rapid eye movement from point A to point B, I have patients all the time that say, oh, wow, like that does feel a lot easier for me to look to the right compared to the left. And so even during exam, a lot of patients are able or I can't and so I think that's a big piece is the edge and being able to.
Is she breaking up for everyone else or just me? Yeah. Okay. I think she's froze now.
Tease that out in the exam is really important. Yes. Can you hear me?
You broke up a little bit. Do you want to back up just a notch?
Okay. Sure. Where did I cut out?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, again, it all goes back to the exam and to be able to communicate to the patient, you know, what you're seeing in your exam and what symptoms are probably coming from neck.
Okay. Unfortunately, she just keeps breaking up on us. All right. We'll move on. We'll see if she comes back. Cassandra, would you like to talk a little bit more to the vestibular system and perhaps like what all is part of the vestibular system? Because I think people hear vestibular, but they don't maybe fully understand what all that entails.
Yeah. So the vestibular system is what tells you where you are in space, or where you are, or when's your neck in relation to your body, when's your head in relation to your neck. So it allowed us to know where we are at every moment. So we compare that information that we receive from the vestibular system with your eyes, with the information that we receive from your ankles, and then we're able to balance ourselves. So we have, as I said, that we have like two parts of the vestibular system. We have the peripheral, that it's more in the inner ear, and then that sends information into the part of the brain that it's called the brainstem. That's more the midline. So we have a nuclei in there that is called the vestibular nuclei. And people, when we think about vestibular system, we always think about the inner part, but we never think about the central part. So, and it's very multimodal. So you receive information from your eyes, from your neck, from your feet, from your cognition. So everything, so the vestibular system is always integrating information from everywhere, from your brain. So it's super important. Sometimes we don't assess it correctly, or sometimes we don't know what to assess. So it's very important for us to know like the balance, how's the eye movements of the patient, and things like that. But yeah.
Great. All right. Now I'm just going to open it up if anyone has anything they want to add to what we've been talking about this evening. I'm sure someone has something to say.
You know, one of the things that I am always amazed with, and I think it's just important to reiterate, is for people who are suffering from concussions or strokes or whatever it is that being determined to work your way through it and find the solutions is really important. So for this group, if there's a lot of patients out there, a lot of people who have had concussions, and you've tried a lot of things, it's okay. You know, you keep working at it until you find that solution. It's out there. And one doctor might be good for one patient and a different doctor is the better one for you. And so even if you tried something, it's okay to try it from a different practitioner because everyone applies the art very uniquely and very differently. So if you're out there and you're working on getting better, it's okay. Keep pursuing it. It can be done. So
Definitely. I'm glad I kept pursuing.
I kind of want to add to what
Oh, Clayton, go ahead.
Kind of want to add what Dr. Ellis and Dr. Stebbin were talking about earlier with the proprioception stuff, and that just to tie it together this way, which is sometimes when we treat like people that are super athletic and they get like this proprioceptive issue, whether it's through a sound map or through the vision, they're sometimes because they're so athletic, they're super wired in a very hyper training way. We almost have to undo that to get them to relax and get to like a neutral state. So for some of the patients that are listening, even if you are not like this great football athlete or, you know, some really high tamed triathlon person, sometimes it's even better not to be that so hyper trained, because then there's less undoing that we have to do to help rebuild like a neutral state. So I don't know, that's what I've noticed working with different levels of fitness and sports people. It's almost like because their vision or ear was off, it's almost like they're reacting this way, just walking down the street, you know, like, so we have to like undo their mechanics. And so that's why, you know, going back to how Amy was talking about, just to bring my arms up and to slowly make, you know, those steps and adjustments, you know, that's a huge victory in your life. Like there's, you know, there's long days in the office where I cannot raise my arm up, you know, like that. And I'm like, oh man, I think my own vestibular system's off and stuff. So it's, you know, do not be frustrated as a patient if you don't feel like you're a super athlete or something like that. Everyone starts from where they are. And sometimes it's an advantage, you know, to not have this preconditioning that your doctor has to work through and get you to a neutral spot, you know, where you can function too. So that's just to throw that in there for some of our wide range of different patients that we have. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it is, you know, and it's you sometimes get very discouraged and you just gotta keep on looking for that right provider. And, you know, I know how frustrating that was. But once you find it, you're just like that validation. I think that initial validation of someone telling me, yes, it's your eyes. Yes, you're feeling dizzy because of that. That alone, like, just like took a huge weight off me after being told, no, you're fine. You're fine. There's nothing wrong. So, all right. Does anyone else have anything they want to add?
I'll just expand on what you just said. Just kind of tying in with all the other practitioners as well. From being in your group and like just seeing the number of people who have seen different functional neurologists and say like, I did get better and I was so terrible and they helped me. And I'm willing to bet a lot of these practitioners have helped a lot of those people, not necessarily just recover to their, you know, pre-injury status, but probably recover to feeling better than that person has ever felt in their life, which is just a huge win, and definitely just a notch in the belt for functional neurology in general being such a powerful modality. And I just wanted to play in with that in brain injury, it can help a lot of people, and it can help a lot of people who have progressed or started to feel more like cognitive decline symptoms as well. So just bringing into that there is definitely hope to be found there as well.
And Dr. Cassie is one of my, I'm constantly texting her with questions when I have questions. What does this mean? So it's always good to have someone like that in your pocket that can just help you and answer those questions. And you're referring to my Facebook group, which is Amy's TBI Tribe. If anyone watching, that is a group. We've grown to over 10,000. We're almost at 11,000 survivors, caregivers, loved ones. I'd say it's probably mostly survivors, but it's just a great group. You know, if you just need to vent about what's going on with you, or if you're looking for some specific referrals or advice, or you know, like, hey, has anyone ever experienced this? Because I see that all the time. Like, man, I just feel dizzy, it feels like my eyes are moving around. Does anybody else ever feel like that? And everybody's like, yep, it's your eyes, it's nystagmus, it's this, it's that, see a functional neurologist. So it's been really cool to watch the group grow to that, because it definitely wasn't that in the beginning. You know, I didn't even know what functional neurology was when I started the group. So it's been really awesome to watch that grow. Anyone else?
Looks like we have a question.
Oh, did I miss one?
The Q&A.
Thanks,
I
Clayton.
don't know if that was. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Or?
Yes.
This is an anonymous person. She said, I've had a series of concussions. I went to a neurologist who told me my symptoms were my imagination. How do you hold your own strength with physicians who don't know concussions but think they do?
Yep, great question.
I would love to hear Mark Ellis talk on that.
Yeah, I was going to say the same.
I can hear you already talking, so now I just want to literally.
Wow. Wow. That is a tough one. Let me take a big tangent on it and go a little broad with it, and maybe dive into Amy's expertise and the acupuncturist expertise, because interoception, we talk about proprioception, but interoception is this sensation of your organs, or your perception of your heart rate, or your perception of your lungs. And people who can be in touch with their own internal body accurately have a greater capacity to trust their own intuition, because all of those messages are going up into your emotional parts of your brain. So interestingly enough, at some point you have to learn to trust your own internal knowing, no matter what. I had a patient in my office the other day, and he said, you should really put all your degrees up on your wall, because then when somebody looks at you, they see all your degrees behind you, and you know the weight that carries. So when the doctor's talking to you and you see the white coat and you see the facility and you see the degrees behind them, they don't mean as much as your own internal awareness and your own internal truth. And you just have to trust into that and keep moving forward, and then surround yourself with people from your world who can understand and be empathetic and support you. But it's not easy to feel good necessarily while you're fighting against a lot of words that are contrary to what you know to be as true. So hang in there, listen to yourself. There's even research on it. Surround yourself with positive people, and you just go forward.
And I think it might be good for somebody, maybe Shane, you want to take this, but there's a difference between a neurologist and a functional neurologist, which is what you guys are. Shane, do you want to tackle that, or anyone want to chime in on that?
I think to make it simple, you know, there's difference in training, and both professions have amazing gifts to give. And I think when you get into traditional neurology, you know, a lot of their strengths is in diagnosing, and it's also in, you know, some of your testing or imaging. And I think where the functional neurology world has their gifting is that, you know, the training is more of trying to understand what's going on within the brain and what tools can we use to make a difference. You know, so much like taking your car to a mechanic, you know, the mechanic is really brilliant on saying, okay, well, I know that part A affects part B. And if A doesn't work, B doesn't work, and then now the car doesn't run. So if we can fix A, then all of a sudden, now these systems are all talking to each other and the car runs smoothly. And I think we're kind of trained to be the mechanics for the brain, where we really, if we could hook up a computer code, a computer system to the brain and get a code, that would be so amazing, but we have to do our exams. And I think Mehul talked about that earlier. Like, I think the beauty of what we do is a very, very full, detailed evaluation. And that's what a lot of us who are in this book are trained, is to look really deep into each person and then say, okay, from a mechanic standpoint, what's broken, how do we fix it, and we got to get this brain working smoothly again. So there's definitely kind of a difference between your traditional neurology and more this holistic or functional neurology, as we kind of have coined. But they both have their giftings. But I think, when it comes to rehab, personally, I think we do a little bit better.
Mhm. Definitely.
Yeah, and I'd like to just add, like, totally agree with both Shane and Mark, and also that, it's not your job as the patient to re-educate this doctor and to take on the task of turning a huge Titanic ship around, just to prove a point. And like, it's don't even waste your time doing that. Even during the pandemic, when we were launching out into the Hamptons and other places, my colleagues and I, because we were just fleeing New York City and stuff, we've seen areas on these small towns where even stuff like psychiatry, where there was just these like 70-year-old and in their late 60s-year-old psychiatrists, like, people did not want to see these doctors anymore. They wanted a younger, a different, more interactive, even type of psychiatrist, even for their kids, So I think the functional neurology field is now even more cutting edge than it was like 10 years ago, 20, like even 5 years ago. It just seems to be like exponentially being the more like appropriate thing, that's so, in a very similar sense, like Chinese medicine, so customizable, basically, is the best way to put it, So like, instead of wasting 1 ounce of trying to convince this doctor, why he's not reading the research, like, no, just be your own example, live your life, walk by him full of energy, and and then he'll probably ask you, like, could I get a card of who you saw or something like that. So, so yeah, it's just not worth that kind of time. Because, when I read that comment, it's like, how do you maintain your strength against them? It's like, you don't have to be against them. Like, tension is two forces on a string, and you don't need to add that tension. You just let that go. So, but
I love that.
The experts, so yeah.
And I just wanted to add, like, going back to the functional neurology part, like, the beauty of functional neurology is, like, there's not a protocol, there's not like a set recipe that you're gonna do to everyone. Like, you can have like 10 different patients with concussions with the same symptoms, but all of them are gonna have probably different objective findings, and you're gonna have different treatments to all of them. So it's like, that's the beauty of our profession too, and that's what we like, because what is in the books, sometimes it doesn't follow. And I love to read books. I know the books back, like the whole thing, but it doesn't follow it. And it's super awesome to do different treatments and see how the brain can change in seconds. So that's like a different too that I notice, and that's what I love about functional neurology.
Yeah, and what Clayton said about, the doctor works for you, not the other way around. And if you're not getting answers, I think I say this a lot in my podcast, but we've kind of been taught to blindly trust our doctors, that they know best. And the truth is, not all doctors know everything. They can't. They only know what they know. And so if you have a doctor that's not giving you clear answers, and you, like Mark alluded to, the interoception, something's not right. Because that's what was happening to me. I was told I was fine. There's nothing they could do for me. And you know best. You know your body, you know who you are. And so just keep looking and turn to one of these amazing people.
Yeah, and I have a lot of patients who come in and apologize for researching things on Google. And there was a bad stigma about researching things on Google, but let me tell you, the artificial intelligence now, you can research on Google and find amazing information. So, you know, if you go, oh, well, I've been, like, for instance, if you go on to Amy's Facebook group, there's tons of people on there. You will get a lot of information from it. So if you feel a little bad that you're trying to find all the answers on Google, that's okay. Don't feel bad about it. The challenge is finding a doctor who can help you filter through it and find what's right for you. It's like I look at, I see it really classically with kids with learning disabilities, and one person does this therapy, and then another person does sound therapy, and then another one rides horses, and then another one realizes that their child's allergic to strep, and another one realizes it's gluten. And so there's all these things in that area, and they're studying all of it and trying all of it. Whereas if you can find a doctor who has studied a lot of it and has experience with a lot of it, they can help you filter to find what's right for you. So it's still good to use the internet and find answers. The challenge is you can get so many answers, then you got to find the doctor to help you filter through it. But you know, keep using that resource too, because it is a really good one. Or support groups like the TBI support group Amy has and things like that are great.
Well, we are just about out of time, and I just appreciate everyone being here. This has just been a wonderful conversation. And again, be sure to register for Concussion Discussions. That begins next Monday, so you have plenty of time to get registered, and check the book out on Kickstarter. Get it pre-ordered so you're one of the very first to get it in your hands. My designer just emailed me tonight that she sent me the PDF proof, so that's exciting. It's getting there, you guys. It's almost done. So I'll be sending that out to all of you, the authors, so that you can take another proofread over it. But I'll just go ahead, and anyone that wants to say their final goodbyes, go ahead, and we'll call it a day.
Well, I'll start off and I'll say thank you to everybody on this panel. Like, you guys are truly amazing, and what you're offering to the world and helping people is just simply incredible. So definitely grateful for all you guys do, and keep up the hard work, and thanks for being a part of this.
I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Wolf. Just texted me her internet just is on the fritz, and she pays a lot of money for it, so she's very upset.
She lives very much in the
Thank
country.
everyone. She wants to thank everyone too. So, and yeah, it's great to reconnect with new and old faces and stuff. So it's great. So thanks for having me. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I'll be sending this replay out to everybody as well. And, feel free to share it with anyone that that may be looking for resources. Feel free to share the video, share the link, share Concussion Discussions. We are all here to help you on your journey. We all want you to succeed and know that there is hope. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Go ahead. If you want to unmute, say goodbye, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank
Have a good day.
you. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone, so much. Have a good night.